And looking back at my presentation, I felt like I wanted to say attempting sustainability through informed community engagement, but we're going to go with the positives that we're achieving it here. For those of you who don't know where Charlotte is or much about it, our population is about 770,000. We're an incredibly large growing area. Our median household income about 55.6. Second largest financial center in the world. We have 6 Fortune 500 companies headquartered within our area. I do want you to know a little bit about where I'm coming from in addition to the geography. I am not a PhD, I'm not a scholar, I'm not an academic. I'm very much a boots on the ground practitioner of this information. I'm learning as we go along. I'm the type of person who learns best by doing it wrong the first time, or maybe starting off a little bit off kilter. Before assuming this role, I really felt like behavior change was caused through my crying, my screaming, my throwing a tantrum, or my issuing a guilt trip. I do still think there's some validity to the guilt trip concept, and I think we heard a little bit about that this morning. But I have learned that there are some other ways, and any one of these tools I'm about to show you takes about an hour to explain, so I'm going to speed talk, but there's a lot of info on the slides. I'm told we're going to get access to all of these presentations, so you'll be able to go back and learn a little bit more about it. From a policy background perspective in Charlotte, we adopted the focus area plan for the environment in 2007. To be honest with you, we didn't do much after that. In 2009, Mayor Fox signed the Conference of Mayors Climate Action Agreement. A great symbolic gesture, but again, didn't really inspire any action. The feds gave us some money in 2009. We got really serious about spending their money. And that's kind of what kicked off our sustainability platform in Charlotte. So my perspective, and again, I am still learning, of how local government really fits into this role of achieving community sustainability is threefold, 3 buckets, 3 roll-out recycle bins, 3 compost bins, if you will, of opportunity. The first one being data, and really an opportunity to create it, compile it, refine it, assess it, maintain it. Very important to say that this data that we're accessing is the community's data. It's not data that we're creating. We're just in a lot of ways being the person who puts it all in one place. Sometimes we're paying for that, but it really is data coming from the community. Secondly is resources. Those are the programs, the partnerships, and the policies that help us to implement these things that we do. And the third, which I believe is the most important and is intentionally in the middle here, is engagement. And that is inspiring those actions. That's the boots on the ground. That's the social media. That's the traditional media. And I include it in the middle because it needs to be internal and external. It needs to move both ways. It needs to inform what data we're collecting, what we're doing with it. It also needs to inform those programs, those partnerships, and those policies, and getting that word out to the community. So traditionally, if you know anything about the South, we're used to being measured on a lot of things. How quickly do our NASCARs get to the finish line? How good is our barbecue versus Kansas City? How well is the banking industry doing? And also, how sweet is our tea? But as time goes on, we're looking at some new metrics. We're looking at things like technology and innovation. We're looking at energy, which is huge for us. We're looking at cultural and arts. And we're looking a lot at quality of life, particularly in the city of Charlotte. So how are we setting that bar? This is a picture of our office on a Friday afternoon. Just kidding. Actually, I'm not really kidding, but this tool is incredible, and I do not have time to do it justice, but it is the Quality of Life Study 2012. It is something that's been happening in our office since 1993. It began as a very small study for a very small geography with very little information. It really was our city within a city geography, our urban core of our city. It includes the 73 neighborhoods, and we collected 20 variables, 20 data points for each of those neighborhoods. We do it every 2 years, and each one of those times the study really has improved tremendously. But I say that in 2012 it was reimagined because it really was. This was the largest expansion of this tool. We went from 20 variables at the start to 80 variables. We have 16 of those variables being environmental. We've never addressed the environment in this study before. We are now at 464 city and county neighborhoods, and that is symbolic because we have reached out of the limits of the city of Charlotte. We have included our entire county and all of the towns within it. And this is really a first for them, and you'll see when you see some pictures of the data, we don't have data for all of them because a lot of the programs have been very active in Charlotte. But this kind of created a placeholder to encourage those cities to start collecting the data, start improving these programs, and know that they're being showcased as an opportunity for them to get external recognition, but also to inform their own efforts and work plans internally. And the other big thing is this became an interactive web-based format. Prior to that, it was about a 500-page PDF, which, printing that out was wonderful to support our sustainability goals. Looking at the previous dimensions or categories of data, we looked at social, we looked at crime, physical, economic, very standard census-related information. Moving forward, our dimensions, as we call them, community character, community engagement, community economics, health, safety, environment, and housing. So really a wealth of information. A lot of that coming from the American Community Survey, but more than half of it coming from local sources and things that the city is maintaining in the county. The environmental indicators, we looked at things like commuters driving alone, bicycle friendliness, percentage of tree canopy, amount of waste being diverted from the landfills, water consumption, energy consumption, gas consumption. The electric consumption is huge. We had to partner with Duke Energy to get that. We had to get approval from the North Carolina Utilities Commission. We are the only city that we know of that has actual household energy use for every one of Duke Energy's customers. It took us 2 years to negotiate that process, but we were persistent and we made it through. So this is what the dashboard looks like. This is a screen capture. I say it provides the community's data. I like to refer to this tool as a reflection. It really is a reflection of what's going on in our neighborhoods. It's not something we're creating. It's neighborhood scale data, which changes the question when you're looking at environment, because water quality is out, air quality is out. These things can't be measured at a neighborhood level. What and why is incredibly important, and you see there the why is this important. Why do we think citizens want to know about this particular variable? And also the about. People use this data a lot. They make a lot of assumptions based on the data. That's fine. We want you to use it, but we want you to know what you're using. So if we only measured Tuesday and Thursday afternoon when we counted transit usership, we want you to know that that's what this data is based on and not assume that it's something different. Something else that's tremendous about this tool, trend analysis, of course, because it's updated right now every 2 years, hopefully maybe every year moving forward. We can see if neighborhoods are improving or not, but we're providing them resources for the first time, and that's that right column there. If it's 2 in the morning and you're sitting at home thinking about socks and you realize that you've got this variable here and your neighborhood's not doing well, what can you do at that very moment? Is there a phone number you can plan to call at 8 a.m.? Is there a website you can visit? Is there a program that Duke Energy might have available that you can think about initiating your neighborhood in? What can you do right now instead of having to wait and do research? How can we get you started? And then the other great thing about this tool, up on the top toolbar there, you'll see data. This is entirely free to anyone who wants to use it. Anyone who can find this web page, you can download this data free of charge in a shapefile, a CSV, an Excel file, a Google Fusion table. All of it is there. So complete transparency of government information here. It's not us telling you what to believe based on the data. It's us challenging you to take the data and tell us what stories you see within it and what opportunities exist. The other interesting thing about this, you see the 2 colored bars in the middle there. One is blue, one is red. And the variable you're looking at is residential electricity consumption, which happens to be for my neighborhood. It'll tell you there that my neighborhood is using about 1,034 kilowatt hours. It'll tell you the county average is 1139. We know the national average is about 908. Power is really cheap for us in Charlotte. It's under 10 cents a kilowatt hour. We don't often think about how much we're using or how much it's costing us. But funny story about those bars. I presented this to a lady who saw it was the percentage of students who have 10 or greater unexcused absences from school. And her neighborhood was 9.34%, and she was livid. For whatever reason, that resonated with her. She was, what are we gonna do? The world is coming to an end. How do we get the kids to go to school? Oh my God. And then she was like, what's that thing in the middle? And I said, oh, that's that's the county average. And she's like, oh, it's 11, we're doing great. All of a sudden, all of that inspiration and angst was over. So really powerful to be able to compare yourself to others. Are you doing better? Are you doing worse? A great inspiration for change there. Users, there are so many users, I can't list them, but neighborhoods, public agencies, realtors, home buyers, people who are wanting to move into Charlotte from across the country and want to find a neighborhood that's similar to their own. Academic researchers, nonprofits who are trying to apply for grant funding. Really an incredible tool. So these are some of the analyses that we've been able to arrive at from this tool, just very basic. Active transportation on the left there, we looked at bicycle friendliness, we looked at paved streets with sidewalks and street connectivity, and we started to say, where are opportunities for you to exercise outside, to really feel safe and comfortable with outdoor recreation on the streets. And in doing that, I've made these smiley faces to remind myself that we're looking for bright spots in this data. Initially, when I looked at these maps, I only saw them as opportunities to target. I learned two things from that. One, I'm not ever allowed to use the word target again because it apparently is not an appropriate term when you're talking about neighborhood development. But two, when you look at this information, there really are stories of success here, and it's an opportunity for us to kind of profile and showcase those success stories, find out why they're successful, and figure out how to replicate them. The map to the right here is environmental consciousness. This one was great because our GIS guy created this for me before a public meeting, and he had identified the spectrum of high consumption versus low as the planet savers versus the planet destroyers. And thankfully I saw that nomenclature before the public meeting because I think people may have been offended by being called the Earth destroyers. I did keep planet savers there, but found something a little bit more PC for the rest of them. But this map really is our consumption variables. How much electricity, how much gas, how much water are you using, and are you participating in recycling? And again, there are some bright spots there. And what's really neat about some of these bright spots is these are our traditionally impoverished communities that we're showing on this map. And these neighborhoods don't feel like they have a lot going for them. They've got high crime, they've got low property value. This is a way for us to say, you guys are off the charts in environmental sensitivity, and how can we share your stories with others that don't get the message? And we find that really the motivation doesn't matter, it's just that we're getting the success that we want in these neighborhoods. They're riding the bus, they're not using a lot of resources. So a great opportunity to feature them when they're so used to being featured for negativity. A couple of quotes that I like here. Data informs the direction of change. It does not inspire change. It may look like I'm doing nothing, but I'm actually actively waiting for my problems to go away. I think that's something some of our neighborhoods might do. And also, not a scholar is my father, but every once in a while he says something profound. And his favorite statement is, even if it's wrong, let's do something. So just some inspiration to get us started. On the engagement side, I can't stress enough how much it needs to be internal and external. We have this great tool, and it was a challenge for us to even get our city departments to buy into why it had value. And it's because it was not made relevant to them. It wasn't tied to their specific goals or measurements for their department. They weren't being evaluated based on its criteria. They thought it was something that we were doing over in that community engagement department. So it took a lot of effort to get everybody on board. Social media platforms, we're just scratching the surface here. The county is taking the lead on Granicus. It looks amazing to us. We're hoping to be able to participate there. City Counter Speakers Bureau is something that we are working on currently, again, in collaborative with the county. But this really is a cabinet of experts that neighborhoods can have at their disposal if they've got a problem that they want, if crime is high, if they want to learn how to save energy, if they just want to learn how to ride the bus. We want to have these experts available to them free of charge. They can come out and speak at their meetings. The bright spots I mentioned, why are they bright? Let's showcase them. Let's figure out how to replicate them. Another model we use for engagement is just our structure of having service area teams and having them out in the neighborhoods. They do things called knock and talks, where they just go door to door for no apparent reason in a neighborhood and say, hey, did you know these are some things we can do for you? So being very proactive. Also, the concept of taking services where people are. We have some micro facilities in neighborhoods that allow people to apply for a building permit, or I'm sorry, not a building permit, but a zoning permit, or report a code complaint. Because some people just don't like to come to City Hall. They're intimidated, they don't know where to park. This is an opportunity to be in their neighborhoods. Community engagement. I added this slide after all of the conversation that we've been hearing today. This is one of Tom's moments where we say, wow, we're doing something right. Neighborhood Matching Grants is a program that we have available to neighborhoods. They can apply for funding of up to $25,000, so it's not just a couple of pennies here and there. There is a match required. They're either matching with their own dollars, in-kind donations, or volunteer hours. I think they're at about $18 per hour for volunteer effort, so they do have to match all of the money that we give them. These are their projects and their ideas, and quite frankly, we don't really care what we're funding as long as the entire community or the majority of the community is engaged in these things. Some of the things they do, community gardens, school partnerships, monumentation and signage, which is incredibly important because the neighborhood begins to develop that sense of identity, and now they can see that identity physically on the ground because they've got signage to tell them where their neighborhood and their community is. Traffic calming. You can see one of the community gardens, Bike Fest. That project in the bottom left is kind of neat. That was an LED Christmas ball project that a neighborhood did. They had this history of building these Christmas balls out of chicken wire. We took it and retrofitted it, did LEDs, gave out timers, but it was a big community event. Everyone got together, they rolled up their sleeves, they built them together. This project on the right was one of the worst things that ever happened to us. It was a neighborhood who wanted to pair the symphony with a local school and to teach people about music, and that sounds great, but they came to our building around Christmas and they played for about 2 hours in our lobby, and they were not good. In fact, they maybe were awful, but it was magical at the same time, and these kids had this great appreciation for music and for opportunity and for thinking outside of the box, and so we wear headphones and we still applaud them. It was a great opportunity. Sustainable vision plans. This is something really easy, bottom up, grassroots, essentially free. It just costs us some begging our communication staff to create a graphic design for us. Ask communities what they need or want. And a lot of the work that I'm doing with the USDN, I'm asking people, how do you know what the community wants? Are you asking them? And they're saying, well, no, we know what the community needs, so we're creating these programs. And so there really is a need to ask what people want before you give it to them. Within these plans, we are looking at goals, targets, and strategies. That is really hard for people to grasp. I kept asking people, what are your goals? And they would say, well, my goal is I'm going to turn off the water while I'm brushing my teeth. And I say, well, that's not a goal, that's a strategy. Your goal is to save water. And they'd say, yeah, that's our goal. And then I'd say, okay, what's your target? And they say, our target is to save water. And I'm like, no, your target is to save 10% of water within 12 months. And so really getting them on a path of thinking about measurable opportunities. The 5 that you see listed there, we took 11 neighborhoods thus far through this process. Those are the 5 goals that emerged, and every single one of those plans ranked in order. So that's what our neighborhoods are asking us for: energy, water, local food, alternative transit, recreational areas. Again, very important to provide resources in these plans. What you see here, the kind of middle section, those are kind of easy do tomorrow things. For neighborhoods who wanted local food, for example, they said, we want a farmer's market. It's going to take you some time and some money, and it may not be realistic for every neighborhood to have a farmer's market. But you can find out who has a van in your community who's willing to carpool to an existing farmer's market. Or you might be able to pull the resources of your community to find recipes of how they used to cook food. The dandelions were mentioned in Andrew's presentation. Identify barriers. Try to work with people to understand what's preventing them from taking the action. Sometimes it's just not even knowing what phone number to call. And as I mentioned, we've got 11 neighborhoods who have this tangible document in a PDF format that when they ask for funding from us or anyone else, they can give them something professionally prepared that is an outlet to say, hey, we're organized, we know what we're doing, we're going to be a good investment of your time and your money. This is a horrible slide, but it is intended to show you some of the resources. Some programs that we have are developing. The Neighborhood Energy Challenge, you guys might have heard a little bit about that last night, a neighborhood-based sustainability program. Power to Live Green is kind of the 2.0 based on what we learned in Neighborhood Energy Challenge. Commercial building retrofit has been an incredible project for us. We've retrofitted 27 commercial projects, 14 of those being large-scale apartment communities. We've spent about $1 million on that project, and we've seen a leverage on the private side of $9 million, so numbers that City Council loves to see. Other partnerships, Tree Charlotte, the picture you see there on the right, Charlotte has a goal of 50% tree canopy by 2050. To get there, we have to plant 15,000 trees per year. To do that, we need to look at privately owned property. We need to look at public property. We need to get everybody that we know planting trees. So we are kind of the intake. And this is another opportunity of how you can partner. Because we do so much work with neighborhoods, we're kind of the intake mechanism to get neighborhoods into this process. But once we get them in and vetted, we kind of hand them off to this organization called Tree Charlotte, which is a public-private partnership who is really good at planting trees and really good at facilitating how to plant the trees and how to get the arborists out there talking to people. So you don't have to own everything in community engagement. You can just kind of be the facilitation method. Utilities, they provided us data, as I mentioned, Duke Energy. CMUD, our because the city owns our water and sewer utility. They were fabulous. We said, we need a water conservation pilot. They said, what do you want to do? I said, well, this is it. And so they provided money and they provided staff, and because they honestly, a lot of city departments don't want to talk to neighborhoods. You're doing them a favor by being that facilitator of that process. Keep Charlotte Beautiful. Most of your cities have Keep America Beautiful. There's some opportunity there for cleanups, for beautification projects. Some other things that Charlotte's into: Envision Charlotte, which is a behavioral consumption reduction program. E4 Connect is a HUD grant that we've got in our region. B-Cycle is our alternative transportation bicycle policy or program. And I'm not going to talk much about our policies because we're knocking out of the park with a lot of this, but to be honest with you, we're not doing so great on the policy side yet. So I hope to be able to present to you at some time in the future that at the top of the list, but I put it at the bottom for a reason. And so that's kind of where we are. Sorry for the speed presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has. Oh, wait, I do have one more slide. I'm sorry. Just some reflections here, and I'm going to ask Tom to not take notes because I don't want to be held to any of my own reflections at the end of the day. But promoting your work is as important as doing your work. We dropped the ball on this like I cannot tell you. We're so focused in few staff resources, so many ideas, that once you do it, you feel like, yay, it's done, and you don't think about the follow-up and the promotion. The message means everything. Know your audience. We communicate climate change through, are there drafts in your house? Are your kids sick? That works for us. Know what works for you. Ask the right questions. If you're not getting the answer you want, you may have not asked the question properly. There's some things you can do today. Others are going to take you some time. That's okay. Start somewhere. Start with asking people questions. It's cheap. It's easy. Do fewer things and do them well. Proactive engagement is key. Participants are going to resist things that are done to them. They're going to embrace things that are done with them. Tom's statement, ink is cheap. Use it to reward people for great behavior and achievements. It's not going to cost you much, and that recognition goes a long way for people to repeat their behaviors. And lastly, collaborate, collaborate, and collaborate. So thank you, everyone.